Whenever it's a Rambam, it's a book of halacha, we have to understand it literally. So then the Rambam goes on to say that now we're going to go into explaining how do we know who is the person that is Moshiach. There has to be a halachic criteria, a halachic approach, just like there are laws of Shabbos, the laws of Kashrus, there are laws of Pesach, Shavuos, and Rosh Hashanah. There has to be some laws in Torah. How will we halachically identify a person as Moshiach? What is that? So let's start from the top of the page. First, it says what it's not, and then he goes into what it's yes. The first thing is the main thrust of the matter is this is connected to what he said before, which we learned already. The Torah, its statutes, and its laws are everlasting. We may not add to them or subtract to them, which means any person that identifies himself as Mashiach, or people want to identify him as Mashiach, because he has great qualities, even if he's a great Torah scholar. But if he's going to add to the Torah something new, or take away from the Torah something, then that cannot be Mashiach. Mashiach is here to strengthen the Torah, to reinforce the Torah, not to add or to subtract. And actually, we go back in history, and we look at all the people that were called false Mashiachs, starting with Christianity. What they did was introducing a new Torah, New Testament. And that's the first sign that this is not truth. Hashem is true, His Torah is true, Hashem is eternal, and the Torah is eternal. And any changes we find are not God forbid changes in Torah, but we spoke about this last time. There are changes according to Torah. These changes are made according to the rules and principles that are found in Torah. So if a rabbi tells a person that being that the doctor told you that you're not well, you're not allowed to fast on Yom Kippur, it's not changing Torah. That itself is part of Torah, that under certain circumstances, things change. And the example I gave you also was that there never was such a thing as a yeshiva for women until about 150 years ago. It's a change. But the answer is when they established a yeshiva for women, they had to bring proof, I'm talking about the rabbis who endorsed it, that under certain circumstances, yeshiva for women is a positive thing, and that's why they made the change. So the change is based on Torah. It's not changing Torah. It's based on something which is written in the Torah. But if somebody adds the Torah, say that Hashem changed the Torah, and now things are different, that is for sure cannot be Mashiach, because nothing Torah is added and nothing Torah is subtracted. So what is? So how do we identify Mashiach? So that's Dalet. Number 4. If a king will arise from the house of David. So remember we said there are 4 points here, which these are 4 points, the criteria of Mashiach. The first one is that he has to be from the house of King David, which means even if he be the greatest Torah scholar in the world, the greatest tzaddik in the world, if he's not a descendant of King David, then he cannot be Mashiach. Mashiach is going to be somebody who's going to restore the Davidic dynasty of kingdom. So he has to be from the house of King David. Number 1. Number 2, he is learned in Torah and observant of mitzvahs as prescribed by the written law and the oral law, like David, his ancestor, was. This basically means that the person has to be a tzaddik, who is immersed in Torah study, who observes the mitzvahs the most meticulous way, like King David, which means if someone is not a tzaddik, even if he's not doing anything wrong, but he's just not a very righteous person, he doesn't even begin to fulfill the criteria for Mashiach. He has to be a tzaddik. And he has to observe the Torah according to the written Torah and the oral Torah. If you remember, I mentioned that in the times of the Rambam, there was a movement called Karayim. And there were thousands of Jews, unfortunately, part of this movement. And what was it? They only believe in the written Torah and they don't believe in the oral Torah.
Is that like the Tzdukim?
Same as Tzdukim, but Tzdukim was in an earlier generation. That was in times of the second base of English. The Rambam lived 800 years ago. It was the same group, but they called themselves Karayim. Yeah. To give you an example, I'm sure you saw men wearing tefillin, right? The tefillin on the head is over here. The Chumash says it should be between your eyes.
Oh, so
they wear it over here, like this. Even though it says between your eyes, so the oral Torah says Torah means it should be on the top of your head, but between your eyes. It has to be right in the middle. But they say, no, literally, between your eyes. It says in the Torah that on Shabbos you should sit in your house. So the Gemara says, the oral Torah means you're not allowed to walk 2,000 amos away from your city. And they say, no, you have to sit in your house the whole Shabbos. So basically, they have a whole different Torah. It affects everything, laws of marriage, laws of divorce, laws of everything. So Rambam writes, Moshiach has to be a righteous person who learns Torah, observes Torah, the written Torah, and the oral Torah. Criteria number 3. Yaakov Kol Yisrael, in English, he will compel all of Israel to walk in the ways of Torah and reinforce the breaches in the observance of Torah. In other words, when we talk about influencing and inspiring other Jews, there's basically 2 categories. One are those that are not involved in Torah, inspire them to observe Torah. And the other is those that are observing Torah, but there's a lot of breaches. There's a lot of areas where things are not the way they're supposed to be. Exactly. They're missing a lot. And Mashiach is here to encourage them to do things in a better way. So if you look at the words again, it says he will compel all of Israel. Compel doesn't mean that he's going to lock people up in jail and force them. He'll compel through his influence, through his inspiration. He will bring Jews to observe Torah, and he'll bring those who observe Torah to observe Torah in a more meticulous way, in a more enhanced way, in a more proper way. Number 4 is he will fight the wars of Hashem. What does it mean to fight the wars of Hashem? So here there are 2 ways of interpreting it, and both are true. One is literally fighting the wars of Hashem. King David, for example, fought wars. He was like the general, went out into the army, and he fought. Remember I mentioned the other day that, I don't know if it was in this class or the other class, that Hashem said King David can be the one to build the Beis Hamikdash because he has blood on his hand from all the wars. Even though all the wars that he fought were by Hashem's command, and it was all because he was supposed to do it, but it's blood. Hashem wanted that the Beis Hamikdash should be built by Shleiman Malach, who lived in a peaceful time, with no wars, no blood on his hands. So King David was literally a warrior who fought. Another example is, again, those who you had before Yom Tov, we learned in the Rambam about a person called Ben Kuziba, Bar Kochba, that he was someone that everyone thought he was Moshiach. When I say everyone, I don't mean all the people in the marketplace. Everyone means all the Torah scholars, Rabbi Akiva, and all the great tzaddikim of that generation said he has all the criteria of Mashiach. And one of the things was he fought the Romans. He was very powerful. He established a very powerful army, and he reconquered 60 cities from the Romans back to the Jews. Later, they took it away. But over there, it meant fighting the wars literally. The other interpretation is fighting the wars could mean, it's not a metaphor, it's just another way of interpreting fighting the wars, could also mean spiritually. In other words, there have been throughout history so many movements that were challenging Torah Judaism, like the Karayim. They were very strong movement. They attracted a lot of people, and they were fighting Yiddishkeit. And people like the Rambam and others in his generation were fighting against them. I don't mean fighting physically, writing letters, answering their questions, They were challenging Torah one way or another, and they had to give the answers to help people go in the right direction. And then there was, later came the Reform movement, and the conservative movement, and Reconstructionist movements. There's all sorts of movements, even to this day, that are Jewish people and have their own version of Judaism, which is not according to Torah. So fighting the wars of Hashem means, just like the first thing was to strengthen Torah and mitzvahs, it also means to fight off all those forces that try to undermine Torah and mitzvahs. So these are four things. You see the four things? Number one, it has to be from a descendant of King David. I'll get to in a second. Number two, he has to be a tzaddik, learning Torah and mitzvahs. Number three, he has to be involved in bringing all the Jews in the world to Torah and mitzvahs. And number four, he fights any force that's fighting Yiddishkeit, either physically or spiritually, not to protect Torah and mitzvahs, to protect the Yid. Yeah.
So all of this is from the Rambam, from the Hilchot.
Means the laws of kings and their wars.
And where did he get that from?
He gets everything from the Gemara.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can Moshiach be a convert or about Tshuva?
Moshiach could be about Tshuva, but I don't know if he could be a convert. Can't be a convert because he has to be descendant of King David. There you are. Even if he's a Kohen, it can't be Moshiach. Because he's from a different tribe. From the tribe of Levi, not from the tribe of Yehuda. About Tshuva has nothing to do. It can be about a person who's one way and became a tzaddik.
And is there a section in the Gemara that talks specifically about Moshiach, or is it all over?
I just want to add something. By the way, where does David HaMelech come from?
Ruth.
David himself comes from a convert, right? From Ruth. But Moshiach has to come from David, so he can't be a convert. What'd you say, Chana?
Is there a section in the Gemara that speaks about Moshiach specifically?
Yeah, we're going to learn that. We're going to learn that in class also.
Okay.
First of all, it's scattered in different places.
Right.
Then there's one tractate which is called Sanhedrin.
Right.
And that tractate, there's a few pages on the subject of Moshiach.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I want to point out two terms which we already covered. One is number 10. I hope you don't mind, but I specifically wrote it in the Hebrew because I would like you to become familiar with the Hebrew. Number 10, Yaakov Kol Yisrael. That's alluding to what the Rambam said, that he will compel all of the Yidden to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Yaakov means to compel, Kol Yisrael, all the Jews, and all the Jews to keep Torah and mitzvahs. That's one thing which we just covered. The second thing is number, let's see if I have it here. Interesting, I don't even have it. Okay. Listen. I guess the second thing would be what we just learned. Yilcham Milchemes Hashem. Will fight the wars of Hashem. If you see those words, you know it's referring to Mashiach. That's one of the criteria of Mashiach that will fight the wars of Hashem. So I'm going to add that. It's there? No, I don't see it.
Oh, is that?
You do see it?
No.
No. Make a new list. Milchemes Hashem. Okay, so now let's continue. So what if he has these four things? You can assume that this person is Mashiach. So that's what happened with Bar Kokhba. The rabbi saw he was a descendant of King David. He was obviously a tzaddik. He was influencing Yidden to keep Torah mitzvahs. He was fighting the wars of Hashem, fighting the Romans. He had all the signs that he's Moshiach. He goes on, Im Asa B'Tzliach, if he did all these things and he was successful, it continued to succeed. Ubana Migdash. And then he went on and continued and built the Beis HaMikdash. In its place in Yerushalayim. The Kibbutz Nidchei Yisrael. And he actually brought together all the Jews from around the world to come back to Israel. If that happens, Areza Mashiach Bevadai. That's Mashiach Bevadai. So these are two terms here. And the first term applies to the first set of things that he achieves. The second term applies if he achieves the second set. So first of all, let me refer you to the list over here. Number 9 is Becheskas Mashiach, which means you can assume that he is Mashiach. That's if the first 4 things are there, then you can assume that he is Mashiach. Then there's another term, which is number 11, Vadai Mashiach. He's certainly Mashiach. When is that? If we see that whatever he did continues to succeed, and he actually is successful in building the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, which means if he builds a beautiful Beis HaMikdash, but not in this place, in a different place, that doesn't count. Only if he built, because Hashem promised that all the Beis HaMikdash are going to be only in Yerushalayim. So the third Beis HaMikdash has to be in the exact same spot that the first one was. So if he builds a beautiful structure in Tel Aviv, not good enough. It's to be in Yerushalayim. And if he does that, and not only that, but he brings Jews from all over the world, they all come to Eretz Yisrael, Vadei Mashiach, then we use then he's referred to as Vadei Mashiach. Now, what is the difference between the two terms? I want to explain a little bit. Again, we spoke about this in the beginning, just to refresh your memory. When it says all the Jews will come back to Eretz Yisrael, it means, first of all the Jews that are living in the world, but also all the 10 tribes that are lost. We don't know where they are. Once Mashiach comes, they're going to become aware that they are Jews, and they're all going to come to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim as well. So the difference is like this, and we'll soon see where the Rambam explains this. The first stage, the person you could assume is Mashiach, but it's still reversible. If we don't merit that he should come, even though all those things happen, Hashem could reverse the situation, and this person will no longer continue leading us out of Golos. If the second stage happens, which means it went as far as building the Beis HaMikdash, it went as far as bringing all the Jews to Eretz Yisrael, if Hashem would allow things to go to that point, then you could know that it's irreversible. That's it, with absolute certainty forever, and we're never going back to Golos. But the first stage could still be reversible. And that's what happened in the times of Rabbi Akiva. There was an individual, it was a tzaddik, and he had all that criteria, but the nation, the people, the Yidden were not worthy of Mashiach for whatever reason. And therefore, even though he had all the criteria and he was already revealed and identified as Mashiach, Rabbi Akiva referred to him openly as Mashiach, but still there was a possibility that it could be reversible. And that's actually what happened. Because the Jews didn't have the merit to have Mashiach, it did not come to fruition. So that's the difference. Becheskas Mashiach means it doesn't necessarily, we're not sure it'll come to fruition. But Vadei Mashiach means we're absolutely certain that it will come to fruition. Is it clear? Any questions?
How do we know that we are already now?
How do we know what?
That we are already like now.
Generally speaking, now we're in a stage which is, if there's somebody, we don't have Beis Hamikdash now. If there would be somebody that would be identified as Mashiach, and there's no Beis Hamikdash, that means that it's still reversible. Generally speaking. There's an explanation why not, but I'm not going to go into that now. That'll be too complicated at this point, but we'll go into it. So if you want to write down a definition by number 11 and number 9, by number 9 I would write, we can assume he's Mashiach, but it's reversible. And number 11 means his status as Mashiach is irreversible.
So, but what does the reversibility depend on? Like,
If he doesn't succeed, like for example, I'll give you an example. It says in Chumash that Avraham Avinu and Sarah made tens of thousands of people believe in Hashem. So I think the Gemara asked the question, so what happened to all these people? Where are they? How come we don't know about them? Who are they? Who are their children? Torah doesn't mention anything about them. We know there was Abraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, the 12 tribes, and there were tens of thousands of people that became Avraham Avinu's followers. Where are they? The Gemara says after Avraham Avinu and Sarah passed away, they all went back to the way they were before. I mean, there's an explanation. Why would that happen? Because the Torah wasn't given yet. But it means they did something, but it wasn't successful all the way, because what they did wasn't accomplished. Or imagine someone builds a Beis Hamikdash and it gets destroyed. That means it wasn't successful. But in this, what it says here, meaning to say, let's say, bringing all the Yidden closer to Yiddishkeit. If, for example, this Chas v'Shalom would reverse, that all the people that became closer to Yiddishkeit, like Avraham Avinu's time, they all give it up. But if you see that it's growing, that means that it's succeeding. That's what it means, successful. But and again, if all the Jews go to Israel and then they leave Israel, it means it was not successful. If you build a Beis Hamikdash and it gets destroyed, it means it was not successful. So if you get to the point where they build a Beis Hamikdash and it's standing, and people come to live in Israel and they're all there through this person, then we know that this is Moshiach. About that. That's what it's saying. So really the strongest symbol that we reach, the sort of what would you call it, in a race, when you reach the line, that you pass the line, that's when you see the Beis Hamikdash standing. That's really it. And what's going to happen once this happens? Let's turn the page to 224. And now this person, he will then improve the entire world, which means, again, there's a misconception that Mashiach is only for the Jewish people. No, Mashiach is for all the nations of the world. He's going to change the whole world. And all the nations will also change. Like it says, I will make the people pure of speech. They will all call upon the name of Hashem and serve him with one purpose. Doesn't mean that the non-Jews will all become Jewish. They will serve Hashem their way by observing their 7 mitzvahs. We will serve Hashem our way by serving the 600 mitzvahs. But everyone will be working together, shoulder to shoulder, to serving one God. And each one will do it their way. Then he goes on and says, if he did not succeed to this degree, or he was killed. This is what happened with Bar Kokhba. The Romans killed him. If that happens, he surely is not the Redeemer promised by the Torah. Rather, he should be considered as all other proper and complete kings of Davidic dynasty who died. In other words, let's say Bar Kokhba. It's not the same like people who say they're false Moshiach. False Mashiach means a person who is really not qualified to be Mashiach, and it's not Mashiach at all, but he is falsely claiming to be Mashiach. And that's what Christianity is. We'll soon see. And that's what some of the people in later generations, like Shabtai Tzvi, did you hear the name Shabtai Tzvi? He also was a false Mashiach. How do we know he was a false Mashiach? Because he actually violated Torah. First, he started to eat certain foods that were not kosher. And when they asked him, how could you do that? He said, it's a deep mystical secret. No such thing. Halacha is halacha. Everybody is under the jurisdiction of Torah, even Mashiach, even the greatest prophet. When then from there he went on to desecrating Shabbos, a deep mystical secret. We know the worst thing that happened was that the king of Turkey, the Sultan, when he heard that he wants to become the king, they arrested him because it was actually threatening the king. He said that the king of Turkey is going to take the crown off his head and put the crown on his head. Well, that's obvious rebellion. So they arrested him, and he was at trial. The verdict was he has to be executed. And then they said the only way you can save your life is if you convert to, I think, Islam. And he converted. Well, they asked him, how could you do that? He said, that's a real deep mystical secret. But when that happened, that's when he lost 99% of his followers. But there was still, they say, about 200 people that continued with him, converted with him, and so on. So it was a very, very painful point in history that people, were misled by this. That's called a false Moshiach. If he's violating Torah, if he's converting to another religion, and if he's doing things, like we said before, against Torah, he doesn't even begin to fulfill the criteria of Mashiach. So another thing the Rambam says, Bar Kokhba was killed by the enemy. And if it was killed by the enemy, then he can be Mashiach. Here there's a big controversy. And that is, people say, oh, so the Rambam says that if the person dies, he can't be Mashiach. But the truth is, we'll learn later, there are many sources in Gemara that Mashiach can be somebody who's alive now, some passed away before. In fact, the Rambam says if he was killed, it can't be Mashiach. Why does he say if he was killed? What does that have to do with being killed? He should say if he dies, it can't be Mashiach. No matter how he dies, whether it's through an illness, whether it's through an accident, whether he was killed by a person. Clearly, the Rambam says if he was killed like Bar Kokhba, because he was killed by the Romans, that's when they knew that he's no longer the person's Mashiach. And on the surface, the simple meaning to that is, if a person is killed by his enemies, we can't say that he was successful. It means he was defeated. His enemies defeated him. Yeah.
How can he come back before Mashiach comes?
In general, how can that be? We're going to go into a little bit later. In general, because it says that Tchias HaMesim, which means those that passed away will come back, even though, generally speaking, that's one of the things that Mashiach himself will accomplish. But it says certain tzaddikim will come back even before. And there's an opinion that says that it could be Mashiach himself will be one of the people that will come back before.
And then after Mashiach comes, then every Jew will come.
Right. In fact, we have a long way to get there, but in the Siddur, in the Shemona Esrei and the Amidah, you'll see right in the beginning it says, praise Hashem because he brings the dead back to life. You'll notice it says about 5 times it brings the dead back to life. So one of the explanations why does it repeat it 5 times is because there will be stages in how people will come back to life. One stage is that tzaddikim will come first, and then other people will come later, and so on. In another place, the Rebbe once said that those people who passed away more recently, they will come back first.
So how long will they come? So will Noah come back?
Noach?
Yeah.
Imagine
So
so.
every tzaddik
All the tzaddikim of the past.
in their order?
Oh, what order they'll come back? I don't know. Size order, chronological order, I'm not sure. It's a fascinating subject. We're going to talk about that also. We'll spend a few classes on Tchias HaMesim. There are some things which are clear. So, in other words, everyone agrees without any exception that Tchias HaMesim is one of those things which is literal, not a metaphor. It means physically people who come back. But to what extent, in what way, and what order, these are the things where there are different opinions and different scenarios. But for example, the Gemara says, when the Beis Hamikdash will be built, how will we know exactly where things have to be? And the Gemara says, Moshe will be there, and Aaron will be there, and they'll guide us. How can they be there if the Beis Hamikdash is not standing yet? So it's before the stage of Tchias HaMesim. So we see that some tzaddikim will rise before the rest.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will they come back like in their own physical body as they were when they were alive, or it would be? Because I'm also thinking about Gilgulim and.
No, you're right. Gilgulim is something different. Gilgulim is something which exists now. That all of us sitting in this room, our souls were here once upon a time. We lived a different kind of life, and now we're in this body. But here, when you say Tchias HaMesim, it means the person, the way you knew them, in their body, the way they were, will be back with his identity, with his consciousness, with his physical body, exactly the same person. Yeah. I remember I was teaching the class here once with a student. She was a very brilliant woman, big activist. She was a writer, and she was a therapist, and very, very intelligent. PhD, I think, in psychology. Anyway, when it said that, she said, Rabbi, you don't mean this literally, right? So I said, no, this is literally not. Come on, that's stretching it a little bit. Come on. But the Rabbi writes, there is no other opinion. There's no two opinions. Everybody. This is something passed on from Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshiach comes, those who passed away will come back. There might be certain opinions. Will everybody come back? Are there certain wicked people they won't merit to come back? But we'll soon learn when we get to that subject that ultimately everybody will come back. That there'll be Tchias HaMesim for everyone. Yeah.
You said that Moshiach can be someone that enemies come after him?
Like what?
Enemies. כאילו Moshiach can be someone that enemies want to kill him?
If he was killed by his enemies, he can be.
But a lot of tzaddikim, there's enemies.
Right, so they're not Moshiach. The great tzaddikim, they're just not Moshiach.
David HaMelech, all the tzaddikim.
But they weren't killed by their enemies.
Okay.
David HaMelech died a natural death. Moshe died.
Okay, not killed by
Killed, yeah.
Okay.
But they wanted to kill.
Can I have one more question?
Yeah.
So, if a Jew was
Cremated,
yeah, so can he or she come back?
So the answer is, the Gemara, the Rebbe, there's a very, he should be living be well. Unfortunately, he's not well now, but he's a brilliant physicist. His name is Professor Branimer. He used to lecture a lot. He was a person who used to be an atheist in Russia, and then he became a observant Jew, and he wrote a book called The Return about his experience. Brilliant. So he once asked the Rebbe, said to the Rebbe, people ask me about Tchias HaMesim, and I lecture to these intellectuals, scientists, physicists. How can I explain something like that? And the Rebbe said, it's very simple. Why don't you say what it says in Gemara? What does it say in Gemara? If God was able to create the body out of nothing, so why it's so hard to believe that the body that was already there is going to be recreated? So of course it has to do with belief in Hashem. If you don't believe in Hashem, you won't believe in Tchias HaMesim. But I want to tell you that I have a book downstairs. I keep it here for that purpose. And it's a book that was written by a physicist, no religion involved. It's pure physics. And the point of his book is, and I know it's physics, because I understand one word in what he writes there. It's about this thick. Anyone wants, you can look at it. And the point of the book is that based on physics, just like physics arrives to any other of their conclusions, based on physics, it comes to two conclusions. One, that there has to be God, and number two, Tchias HaMesim.
Really?
Yeah. If you want to look it, I'll give it to you.
Yeah. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
This is the 1994 it came out with it. So that's the answer. Even a person who's cremated, even though to begin with it's not a positive thing to do, but for Hashem, it's not a difficulty to bring back the body, even though it was cremated. In fact, we learn later that the Gemara says that there's a certain bone that even fire can't destroy it. There's different opinions where it is, but it says somewhere by the spine. And when Hashem will recreate the body, he'll take that bone and from that bone recreate the body again. Thank you. Then he's going to go into why Christianity can't be Moshiach, and why Islam, they also believe that their person was Moshiach. Why, according to Torah, all this is unacceptable. That's going to be the next line there. But the Rambam writes that this person, like Bar Kokhba, he was a tzaddik, he wasn't a false Mashiach, it's just that his status as Mashiach discontinued. That's what it means. He was identified as Mashiach. We're not saying Rabbi Akiva and all the great tzaddikim made a mistake. He was, and he had the potential, but because we didn't merit, it didn't continue. It was discontinued as Mashiach. But in the other cases, like Shabtai Tzvi, or the head of Christianity, or the head of Islam, these are people that to begin with never satisfied the criteria of Mashiach in the first place. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rabbi Majeski, I'm so very confused about the Gilgal.
About what?
About the Gilgal situation. So,
Gilgal is like you're describing. The soul is the same, but the body is a different
right.
body.
So which body would you
Very good question.
come back?
It never fails to hear that question. It always comes up. So the answer is, there's a pasuk that says that the neshama is compared to a candle. That's why when a person passes away, you light candles. So you think of the neshama as a flame. So let's use that as an example. Flame is very different than anything else in the physical world, which is I can have one flame, and from this flame I can light another candle, and the original flame isn't missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
If I have an apple and I cut off a piece, the original apple is half.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a cup of water and take out water, the original cup has less water. But a flame, I can draw and light 10 candles, 100 candles, and the original candle remains the same.
All the bodies would come?
No, so the neshama, when we say the neshama comes down again, it doesn't mean the entire neshama comes down again. It means there's a new neshama that was taken from the original neshama, and that comes down to a new body. So both the neshamas exist separately at the same time, but they're still connected because they come from the same original flame.
So two people in this world
But-
could come from the same neshama? Or is it like, or no?
No, generally speaking, it's someone who's living now,
Oh,
or someone who lived 100 years ago.
right.
That person still has their neshama, and their neshama, let's say, is in Gan Eden. But part of their neshama comes down a second time and goes into the body of someone living today.
Uh-huh.
But that means that the original neshama didn't become smaller, not less. But with the flame, there's no connection. But with the neshama, there's a connection.
Right.
So when Mashiach comes, you'll walk down the street and you'll see somebody and say, I know you from somewhere. I feel I know you. Who are you? Oh, you're my other part of the neshama. But by the way, a shidduchim, that's what a shidduch is. According to Kabbalah, when a husband meets his wife, basically means that his neshama and her neshama, that's a different category, but they were part of one neshama, and that neshama has masculine and feminine. They come down in two separate bodies, and when they meet, they're really reuniting. So when they go out, they say, it's a nice person, but there's no chemistry. Why is there no chemistry? Because they're not really connected. And sometimes he doesn't have all these things on my checklist, but I feel very connected. Why do you feel connected? Because it's really one neshama. But Gilgal is different. Gilgal is usually a neshama of a previous generation.
Right.
So even if the neshama came down 3 times, 4 times, but each neshama is an identity on its own. So when Mashiach comes, all 5 people will be alive.
Right.
So no worries.
But it's all the same neshama?
It's part of it, they're all parts of
Yeah.
the same neshama, yeah.
But they're different.
Different people, each one has their own identity. Like this flame has its own identity, and that flame has its own identity, but this flame comes from that flame. But again, with the flame, so it's just a fire, no connection. With souls, there's more of a connection. Okay.